There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination, at the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, The Church of Failure, and with me, as always, is my trusty co-host, Ayrton McCartney. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. I've been coughing a lot today. I think I have like Ebola or something. But other than that,
I don't think the church is into K-pop novel, bro. The church just apparently can't get the fucking intro music to play off of YouTube through Streamlabs. Because Streamlabs hates me. I think my computer actually has something against me. I think it's jealous of my other computer that sat unused for several years while I just used a tablet, and now that I'm actually using my laptop, it just like, no, fuck you. I want the easy job.
maybe it's jealous
Yeah,
or needs or possessed.
it's envious. You think it's possessed by someone who
Envious.
doesn't like me?
There we go.
Okay. But anyway, you hear the small chapels in the background. They're actually going to be running the show tonight. As per usual. But
Yeah, director is Small Chapel number 1, producer Small Chapel number 2.
correct, yes. But anyway, no, tonight we are here to discuss House of X and Powers of 10, which I didn't know it was called Powers of 10 until, I don't know, today. I mean, there was
Why wouldn't it be called House of 10 then?
because there is actually a House of X in the lore.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, it makes sense that it would be Powers of X.
Well, it kind of like it doesn't make sense to me. It should be Powers of X. I didn't see a single part of the story where it was just like, no. This one's X, but this one's 10.
Yeah, where did you hear that? I'm curious.
It's a footnote on the Wikipedia page, and other YouTubers have been calling it Powers of 10. Like, I just want to know where I missed the damn memo.
Yeah, that makes no sense. Is it like those pretentious people that say Wolverine's technically it's Weapon X, but he's really Weapon 10 because Captain America's Weapon 1 or whatever?
Yeah, basically.
Is it like that same kind of logic they're going by?
I guess. I don't know. I'm going to keep calling it Powers of X, probably.
Me too, because that's just stupid.
But it may also have something to do with the 5 that we see later on in the story. But before we get too far into that,
Yeah. I guess the 10 lives of Moira.
Yeah, something like that. Powers of 10. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
But or the 10 characters. No, Knox. I think Aaron hit it on the head. It's there are hundreds of characters. But I think Ayrton hit it on the head. The 10 lives of Moira and the possibly 11th that she'll get if she does things right this time.
Yeah. So, okay. In that context, it makes a little bit more sense, but I'm still calling it Powers of X.
Now, God, we're jumping ahead so far, but
yeah.
I guess we should probably just kind of walk through the first hour, because there's 12 parts, and we can kind of just walk through it and see where we want to stop, because there's a couple of key points that I want to bring up, mainly a lot of the charts and graphs, the fact that there is literally a mutant language written for this that I spent a good part of my morning decoding a lot of the
Oh, did you?
I did, and then I realized it's probably all on the internet somewhere and I should just not. But anyway, so what we're looking at here, House of X, Powers of 10, is a 12-issue series written by Jonathan Hickman, and the art team is, let me get my issue ready here. The art team is obviously, For House of X, you've got. I'm so good at this, guys.
Let's see. You
For House of
have
X, you've got
Larraz
Pepe
and
Larraz.
Gracia.
Yeah, Pepe Larraz. And Garcia is the colorist on both. And then, let me switch over here. Powers of X. Alright. I believe the
You
chapters
have
have lost interest. Yeah, you've got
oh,
RB
let's
Sylvia on Powers of 10. But, so, and Garcia does coloring on both. And it's a 2 6-issue series. But they're meant to be interwoven and read together. I asked on the last
the tagline. It says two series that are one is what they call it.
Yeah, and I asked in the last show why you wouldn't just write it as one series, but it makes sense now that I've completed the entire thing that you would want to keep House of X and Powers of 10 separated. And here's why.
Right.
At least for me, and feel free to interject. But House of X feels like the story of, what's happening in the right now, like what's going on in the 10th life of Moira Kenrose. And then Powers of X kind of gives the backstory and the explanation that the fact that there has been 10 lives of Moira Kenross and what's happened and how we get to the beginning of House of X.
Yeah. Especially when you get to that ending of Powers.
Yeah.
It definitely has a nice full circle
Right.
kind of feel to it.
And in that comes one of my first critiques, I think, is the reuse of panels. There's
There's a lot of that.
There's a lot of reusing panels, and it's done really well. But I feel like it would have made more of an impact if it would have been the same scene in, similar styles, basically, but not the exact same artwork. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, like if um like the similar things that happen in like her different lives, if like the art style was shifted a little bit for like each different life or something like that.
Well, something like that, but at the same time, like, you start off House of X, and there's one of the most recurring scenes in the entire series, and that's going to be. Actually, no, you don't see that till the end of or the beginning of Powers of X #1. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but God, I'll get that pulled up. I'll
the
talk.
the sideshow
Yeah, I'll talk about
meeting.
that when we get to that in Powers of X. But you do start off with a recurring
Yeah,
scene in House of X
you do.
that you get more exposition for later on, and that's who we'll come to find out is
Which
Charles Xavier. Go ahead.
which is cool. I will have to say, like when they kind of bring it back around later
Yeah,
and actually explain what's going on in this beginning part here.
right.
Because
Because
when I first read it, I was like, "What in the hell is going on?" I was
right.
like, that looks like it could be Cyclops or like a descendant or a clone or something like that.
Well, if you remember the first time that I read this, I said, "Why the hell is the Maker involved in the story?" Right?
Yeah, yeah,
And one thing that I didn't quite get because I've been away from X-Men for a while now, and I didn't realize that. Oh my goodness! I'm sorry, you guys. My children just will not let me have any kind of peace in this streaming hour that I take. They avoid me like the plague all day, and then when I sit down to actually talk with you guys, they're just like, "Hey, how's it going? What are you doing?" But anyway, no, I thought this was maybe the Maker, but I come to find out because I've been out of the X-Men lore for so long that this is apparently Phantom X with Professor Xavier's mind. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
not,
didn't know that was a thing yet either.
yeah, I'm not entirely sure when that happened because the last time I encountered Phantomax, it actually came from, uh, oh goodness, uh,
I'm, I'm trying to think when the.
well, it was Remender. It was Remender's Uncanny X Force, and I remember hearing about on Gateway into Comics live stream about this entire series that someone compared this to Remender's as for the best X-Men story in the last decade. And it made me think about it, and
Hmm.
that's the last time I saw Phantomax because it was Phantomax, Wolverine, Psylocke, and Archangel were all on an X-Force team, and they were supposedly the Black Ops of the X-Men.
Wasn't. I thought Nightcrawler was part of that too. Or is that a different X Force
He might have been.
book?
He might have been involved in that, but I don't know that he would have been for long because it's been so long since I read it. I know I read it in the lead up to Secret Wars actually, but because it was recommended reading, it didn't really tie in at all, but it was a good series. That was the story where they basically kidnapped Apocalypse and cloned a new Apocalypse and raised him to be a good guy. It was a very weird
Oh yeah,
storyline.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that was the last time I saw
I, I,
Phantomax.
yeah, I did read some of that. I remember that now.
But
Yeah, that was weird.
apparently, sometime in between then and now, Phantomax, his body has been used to house Xavier's mind. And I only learned that from reading the Wikipedia. So, I mean, fact check me on that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd really like to know when and how that happened.
It didn't have uh,
A
like a source
citation.
link to
It
that.
probably
Yeah,
did,
citation.
but
Thank you.
I've listened to probably 10 hours of live stream today on 1.5 speed.
That's,
It's a kid. It was a kid apocalypse by that was cloned by Mr. Sinister or something. It's a very strange
yeah, it's
storyline,
really weird.
but it was good. So, I just dealt with
Yeah,
it.
from what I remember of it, I liked it.
But center this up is bothering me.
How do you kidnap Apocalypse?
Carefully. But
Yeah, very carefully.
yeah, it's Remender's Uncanny X Force, and it's the one where Wolverine has the really awesome black suit.
Probably one of my favorite Wolverine suits.
So anyway, Phantomax, and you get all of these mutants crawling out of these eggs, and one of them is Cyclops. That's confirmed later on, but it's not confirmed in this storyline. So we've talked about this issue. We find out that mutants all around the world are planting Krakoan flowers and creating habitats. And in this issue, we're also introduced to Mr. Sinister as the best X-Men villain aside from Magneto. That's questionable. I'm partial to Mojo, but he's underused and overplayed what he is.
Oh, I love Mojo.
Sinister's a good one, but I think they kind of overdid it with Bar Sinister. But that's another story. Overall,
Yeah, Sinister's one of the more fun villains. I'll give you that.
absolutely. Um, Overall, though, you end up with finding out that all of these guys are planting flowers all over the world. They're essentially creating habitats for Krakoa. And then you get these really interesting graphs where it kind of explains what Krakoa is. Now, we went over this in the first show, so we're not going to linger on it too much, but just to touch back on it. They're introducing 3 human drugs, and they're also showing that the Krakoan flowers offer gateways in between habitats, both created by Krakoan flowers. And then there's a secret no place that is essentially a non-naturally occurring flower, you know, product.
Yeah, it's like a I'm trying to think how they. I'm trying to remember how they explain it.
It exists
It's
outside of the
Moira's.
yeah, Moira's no
Like
place,
it's Moira's. Yeah, that's what it is.
which sounds dirty when you say it 2 times fast, but we'll get past that.
I thought
Um,
it's nowhere place, not just no place.
no, it just says no place.
Oh,
But
maybe they changed it in one of the later issues because they realized that sounds really bad.
well, you find out that well, this is the first issue of House of X, and it just says no place on the chart. So,
Okay.
anyway, you end up finding out that essentially every world government has been asked for. Well, every world government has been asked to accept sovereignty of the mutant nation of Krakoa. And for readers of X-Men, you find out that this is a single island nation where they're trying to gather up all the mutants and keep them safe, which rings very true of Genosha. And that kind of
Yeah.
comes back up later on in the story. So, for those that don't know, again, Genosha is an X-Men storyline where all the mutants were basically ferried off to an island, and 99% of the mutant population was extinguished that day.
Yeah, that's a good story. We should add that to the list.
God, that's a long story.
It is, but
But yeah, so they bring that up later on. But right now, we're just going with it. So Krakoa is this mutant haven. It's explained that only mutants can get in. If humans come in to any of the habitats, they have to ask permission and be accompanied by mutants. They can never set foot on the actual island. And, it's kind of all laid out and explained. There are languages set up that only mutants can understand, which is what these weird symbols correlate to. Eventually, about halfway through the story, they're like, here, have a key so you can finally decipher all this crap we've been putting down. And some translations don't make sense. Like the markings over some of the doors, they don't translate to actual words. They're abbreviations, they're letter codes, stuff like that. But all of the titles at the end of the books and all of the promotional material with these symbols in them actually do have some kind of meaning. So that could be something fun for anybody out there who's reading this. For anybody who's reading this to kind of do is once you get to that key is to go back and figure out what does and what doesn't spell things out. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because I don't think anything is lost not decoding everything that happens, but it's kind of fun. It takes me back to the days of having the decoder ring out of the cereal box. So
that was really fun.
So that's kind of where the first issue of House of X leads off. There's also a subplot of Mystique, Toad, and Sabretooth trying to acquire some information, and they don't.
Because it would be those three.
Yeah, and they don't get away clean. They actually end up getting caught by the Fantastic Four, and Sabretooth is taken hostage. So, Cyclops tries to go get him because of the amnesty that they've requested because of their sovereign nation. He is thoroughly rejected by the Thing. And in order not to start anything, he's just like, look, you guys keep him, we'll deal with it later. By the way, tell Franklin Richards, probably the most powerful being on Earth, that he's got a place at Krakoa when he wants to come be with his mutant family. And then he just trots back through a gate and closes the gate off.
So now, technically, the Richards kids are born with their powers, but do they technically have the mutant gene, or
Yes.
is just the
Franklin Richards
mutation?
Franklin Richards is a mutant. Valeria Richards is not.
Okay, because that's always confused me. Like, do they count as mutants, or do they just have powers because they're parents do
No.
when like the radiation was passed on. Like,
No. Franklin Richards has reality warping powers. That's his mutant gene.
yeah,
Like he can warp reality, create like pockets in space time continuum. He's basically kind of the
well, he can
hero
create a whole
of
universe by will,
yeah.
right?
He's basically the hero of the Onslaught saga because he saved all the human heroes after Onslaught took out the mutants. You not
I don't know. It
remember that
still
that
confuses me.
the Age of Heroes storyline where Franklin Richard just shows up out of nowhere and it's just like, all right, here's Captain America and all the Avengers and everybody to fight Onslaught.
Oh yeah,
That was the
I
Age
don't
of
know if I
Heroes
ever
era
actually read it, but
Marvel.
yeah.
There were, I believe, there were some Liefeld covers back then, some Captain Americas with no feet and too many muscles in his legs. You have no idea what I'm talking
Okay,
about
so I
either.
found
Go ahead.
no, and I was doing some digging onto that Fontamax thing. Um, so Xavier got partially absorbed by the Shadow King in the astral plane, and then
Right,
when the
that.
X-Men ultimately defeated them, Fontamax donated his body, which Xavier used to build himself a new younger one.
Okay. Interesting. What
So
storyline
that's
was
when
that
all
from?
that happened. Uh,
Does it say if it was collected
see,
anywhere or anything?
uh, a man called X is
Okay.
what it is, the header that it says.
Interesting. It might have
So
been
whatever
like,
storyline that one is.
yeah, interesting. I'll have to look at that. Again, I've been checked out of
Yeah.
X-Men comics
So
for a while. Knox in the chat says, if you have a mutated gene passed down to you, wouldn't that by definition make you a mutant? No. Having the X gene
uh,
specifically makes you a mutant.
yeah,
Spider-Man is not a
because
mutant, but even though his kid has the spider gene, they are not mutants. They are, they got their powers.
mutates, I
Yeah,
think they call it.
they are humans with mutate genes or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah, which is really confusing. You know that, and that reminds. I think it was X-Men animated series and like a Spider-Man animated series. Like there was a couple of crossover episodes when they were doing the storyline with Peter growing the extra arms,
yeah,
and he tries to go to Professor X for help, and he says like, "Oh no, this was an accident." And they were like, "What? You weren't born this way?"
yeah. Uh,
Basically, like, "Oh, so you're not really a mutant?" And he's like, what the fuck, guys?" That's all I really remember of the episode.
right. No, I do. I do remember that, and
But I just remember being a kid and being like, wait, what? Because I didn't really understand like the lore yet. Like I
right.
was just getting into all of this stuff, and I was like, wait, what's going on?
Well, the second issue, or the second part of the story, it kind of opens up into four alternate storylines. They're broken down, and again, we've covered this in other videos, so I'm just going to kind of breeze past it so that we can move on to the better parts. Well, not better because all of it's good, but to the further parts of
Yeah,
the story that we haven't talked about yet. You've got year one, the dream, year 10, the world, year 100, the war, and year 1000, ascension. And in these different years are all different
and
storylines. Go ahead.
and this makes so much sense after reading the whole thing,
Right. Um,
like what they all are.
so year one is where you get the scene that I was talking about earlier. Probably one of the most repeated scenes in the book, and that is let's see here. Get that pulled up.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah, you get it's a carnival.
meeting and
Yeah, a carnival where Moira and Xavier meet for the first time, and
which I just got to say, wouldn't you love a pretty Scottish girl to just saunter up to you at a carnival sideshow and just sit on next to you on a bench and just start chatting you up?
Yeah, up until the part where she said my name and I didn't know how the hell she knew me.
Yeah, that
Take you
might
aback a little
freak.
bit.
Yeah,
But
yeah, a little bit.
what we come to realize is that Charles Xavier is just coming to his fruitful plan of humans and mutants living peacefully side by side for the rest of their days, and he's extremely happy about it. And McTaggart sits down next, or well, Kinross sits down next to him because her name changes throughout, but the current version that we have is Moira Kinross. So you
Which is really annoying. But
yeah, so you yeah, eventually McTaggart. She explains that the dream is real, and Charles reads her mind to find out how she knows him with her permission, and he gets this startled look on his face, and it cuts away to year 10, which, spoiler alert, and we find this out by the end of the book, but you kind of piece it together. Uh, year 10 is essentially what year House of X is taking place in.
yeah,
Everything that's taking place in House of X is essentially referenced anytime year 10 is brought up in Powers of X. So you get a little bit of further information on Mystique and Toad when they arrive back at Krakoa and hand off the information to X and Magneto, and then they start to look at the contents, and then it flashes away again, and then you get to year 100.
yeah. There's a lot of that early on in these books.
Right. Well, it's just enough story to keep you hooked. Like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
And you want to know more,
And then
but
snatch it away from you.
right.
And you're like, God damn you, Hickman.
So year 100, which is subtitled "The War," you get to almost like a Days of Future Past Earth, where
Yeah.
Sentinels and Nimrods and supposedly humans have won against the mutants, and Nimrod the
Yeah,
Lesser is
they say what that there's only like 12 mutants left alive at this point
something like
or
that.
something like that.
But this is this is kind of one of the key storylines in this book, because year 100, the only place we hear about it is in Powers of X, and you find out that there's a group of renegade mutants, and they're trying to accomplish some mission. And they started out as a group of four. Two of them died. Well, one of them dies. One of them's captured and is subsequently killed by Nimrod the Lesser. But two
And
of them,
I think what I said this back when we first reviewed this in one of the creepiest sci-fi ways possible, but we'll get to that.
yeah, two of them actually succeed at their mission and escape. One of them resembling Nightcrawler, who is a supposedly a genetic failure. They call him Priest, I believe.
Yeah, you have where is it?
Cardinal, the mutant Cardinal.
Yeah, and then
then
Rasputin is the girl.
Yeah, and Rasputin is really cool. She's a cross like a cross gene mutant where you have Shadowcat, some mutant named Choir that has telepathy. I don't remember who exactly that is. You got Colossus's metal frame. I can pull it up because it's one of the cooler
Yeah,
ideas that was introduced here. But apparently, at one point in time, the genetic
yeah, they're technically chimera mutants, so they're from the Sinister breeding program on Mars, and they use uh, which we find out about a database of mutant genomes to like try and build mutants, basically.
right, and they're bred for war, and you get this one who's basically Colossus and Shadowcat mixed together. She can phase through things. She's got an energy sword, which is badass.
Oh
And
yeah, I love the energy sword.
she's fearless, brave, all that good stuff. She tries to save Sila Bell, which is the captured mutant you see here, who was also engineered to be a traitor and somehow double crossed and ended up on the
and
rebellion.
and it also has a genetic tick that they refer to, I think, as black brain
Right.
or something like that. So her like genome can't be detected like by the Sentinels, or like her brain. There's something weird, like she can't be detected by some of Nimrod's
Te-
like technology. Basically, she can slip past it.
right. And you've got Cardinal, which is basically reminiscent of Nightcrawler. So they get back to a main base through a Krakoan flower after Silabella is captured, and they encounter Wolverine and Zorn, who are revealed to be Horsemen of Apocalypse. I don't know that they're
Yes, Nox. She is the center of the cover of this first issue.
right. Yeah,
Anyways,
but I don't know. Are they confirmed as Horsemen in this issue? Because I think they call Wolverine War.
I don't know if they're confirmed necessarily, or if that's just what Apocalypse knows Wolverine by from the past. So he's
No,
just
no,
continuing
they're
to
confirmed as
call
the
him
Four
War.
Horsemen. Yeah, Cipher is Famine. Well, you later find out Cipher is Famine. Zorn is Death, but Wolverine is definitely War. Um, so yeah, I don't know if they're confirmed or what, but they're the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse. Spoiler alert. In this timeline, Apocalypse is your main protagonist, believe it or not, in the war against Sentinels. So then you get to the year 1000 portion where you've got the Ascension, and you're encountered with a blue skinned being known as the Librarian. And if anybody's seen Booster Gold, you've got Wolverine, fantastic. Um, you've got a little floating gadget around the Librarian, and that's Nimrod the Greater. Um, so, with the name like Nimrod, you obviously assume that this is some kind of Sentinel technology, and you're led to believe that the blue skinned figure is a mutant, and they're keeping a habitat of humans in a just in a preserve, but it,
Biome.
yeah, a biome, a preserve, it's the same damn thing. Why do you have to correct me? Um, but it makes a statement. It's important that we never let them have dominion again. And we at this point you're left to assume that it's human because you have a very Adam and Eve type scene unfold. I think I can pull that up. I think I've got
Yeah.
that here. Uh, let's see.
That and Nimrod the Greater like references like Homo sapiens and like other stuff like during their little conversation walking up to it.
Right. So
So you're kind of like, all
that's
right then.
that's just the first two issues. That's just the first two parts of the story. Here's the artwork, and in the last panel here is where you see the humanoids in their habitat. Um, so, like I said, from all appearances, mutants essentially rule this planet and have enslaved the machines by appearances, but not all things are as they seem. So moving into part three, which is actually House of X, because these take turns alternating, and then you'll read two issues of one, and then they'll alternate some more.
Yeah, which got so confusing when
It
trying to buy these.
it did, but at the same time, they came out in order, and there was a reading order at the back of every book. So I mean,
Yeah.
so then
Every week when I would call to make sure they would to like have them hold one for me before I got there.
yeah,
Like if I had to work that day, I'd always have to like pull up on my phone real quick and like double check which one was the one coming out for this week. So be like, wait, where are we at? I have no idea.
So this issue kind of hits you right in the chest. It derails everything you thought you might understand about this story going forward. House of X
Yeah.
number 2 is it? Yeah, it's House of X number 2. Um, it's a timeline of Moira's history. It gives you a brief introduction of her power set. She has the power of reincarnation. And as soon as she figured it out, after dying at 74 years old, um, she woke up in her mother's womb with all of her past life's memories. So going forward, she was always kind of accepted as gifted early in life, and many times she got accepted into Oxford, which is where she first meets Xavier. Now, multiple times over the
Yes, but
course
should
of
be it. I know we mentioned it before, but it's not your typical reincarnation. She's reincarnated into
the same
the
timeline.
same life, like a
Right,
quantum
right.
entanglement sort of thing,
And this is
is
something that
how
I
I interpret it.
right, and this is something I kind of wanted to touch on because I think this is kind of a staple in Hickman's writing. In Secret Wars 2015, you've got the Molecule Man who exists in every multiverse as himself with no variations. Yes, she's Kenny from South Park. Um, and Molecule Men are gathered from every multiverse basically to make a giant bomb in Secret Wars 2015, but the Molecule Man before this hadn't been a major character in 30 years. So you kind of have the same thing going on with Moira. Moira has kind of always been a background character in the X-Men storyline, but she's never really amounted to anything excruciatingly important until now. So I kind of saw that as a pattern in Hickman's writing when he's writing these epic stories where he has to have kind of a catalyst character that wasn't necessarily
Yeah,
superbly popular. I
right.
you know so it gives you a breakdown
I
of
mean, before
go ahead.
before this, all I really knew about her is she was just like a geneticist that Professor X was
Still,
friends with, who like specialized in mutant genetics
yeah,
and like worked for the State Department or something like that back in the day
right.
or whatever. Worked for somebody.
Yeah, sword, shield, aim, somebody.
Yeah, one of those.
But it gives you kind of a breakdown of her 10 lives. So I'm going to kind of walk through those real quick and we'll move on to Powers of X number 2. But Moira lives her life to 74 and dies of natural causes. That's when she discovers her powers during her second life. So she becomes an academic and goes to Oxford. She spends, 20 years researching things and finds out that Xavier was a mutant, and she got on a plane to America and crashed and died and started her third life, which is kind of shitty.
Yeah, yeah,
But
which I just have to say this diagram is just so cool.
yeah, I want to know who's behind the
Anyways,
X. I want to know who's behind the X thing. Is that Nimrod and Scarlet Witch? I think that's Nimrod and Scarlet Witch back there, but correct me if I'm wrong.
um,
But anyway, third
not
life,
sure.
she decided to focus on anthropology and genetics, and she meets Xavier earlier in life, and his arrogance leads her to creating a cure for mutation. Um, she succeeds, but then her lab is invaded by Mystique and a mutant named Destiny, and apparently Pyro, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And Destiny is a mutant with precognitive powers. So Destiny basically walks up to her and says, "Look, I know what you are, and let me explain. You're gonna reincarnate unless, somebody kills you before you're 13 years old. But you're not gonna reincarnate infinitely. You got maybe 10 lives. 11 if you're lucky. But if you ever do any anti-mutant shit again, I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna kill you before your X gene actually happens, and that's it for you. You're done." And then she has Pyro burn Moira to death and specifies slowly so that she'll remember this. um, you know, uh,
Just super intense and fucked up.
yeah.
But
Moira 4 is more the Moira that we know. She again tries to further the cause of Xavier and is killed by a Sentinel in a Days of Future Past type setting. Moira 5 decides to meet Xavier and convince him to create an isolated haven for mutants, and is eventually killed by Sentinels. We don't figure out what Moira 6's lifeline is like yet. Moira 7 decides to become an assassin, kills everybody in Bolivar Trask family, and that doesn't work, and she's eventually exterminated. Moira 8 joins up with Magneto. They're basically defeated by the X-Men, and she dies in a failed prison escape. Moira 9 is further radicalized and decides to ally with Apocalypse to go to war with humankind. And Moira 10 is our present Moira McTaggart, and she explains that she and Xavier will break all the rules. She meets him at Oxford and tells her to read her mind, showing him all that she has done. So that's that's kind of where we start our story. So we start our story 3 chapters in, basically. Then you move on to
and she looks good for 52.
Yeah, no shit. But there's a really cool chart in this book, and even with this chart, like, you're kind of left like, what the hell's going on? Because it gives you it gives you a full timeline,
and it's spread over 3 pages.
Yeah, it
and
gives
so you're
you
flipping back and forth between all 3 of them trying to follow it.
Right. So it gives you a kind of a full timeline on where it still goes in order off to the next page.
Yeah, but you have to flip back and forth. Is what I mean. Like, you can't read it all. Like, you can't just read one page then
you can't
go to
read
the next
just one
because you get a little confused. Yeah.
How many Moiras are killed by Sentinels? Let's
At
see.
least 4, I think.
3 or 4, yeah. Well, no, 3, because one's killed in a prison escape after she helped Magneto.
Oh, okay.
So you got natural causes, plane crash, Sentinels. Or no, actually, natural death, plane crash, burned to death by pyro, Sentinels.
Sentinel.
No, just Sentinel, and then
You would assume when she dies after discovering the Master Mold facility, Sentinels would be involved in that, right?
probably.
I mean, I would assume so.
But yeah, natural causes,
I'm saying
plane
3.
crash, fire, Sentinel attack. We don't know yet. Discovering Wild Master Mold facility. We'll call that Sentinels. Failed prison escape. We don't know how she dies in the 9th or 10th timeline. So we're kind of still in the dark on what happened during the 6th, 9th, and 10th timeline towards the end. But that's
Yeah, well, the 10th timeline we know,
well, we know where
just not
she's
yet.
at, just not
And
where she ends. And that's part 3. So part 4 goes back to Powers of X number 2, and in this one, you still have the 4-part breakdown. So it starts off year 1. Um, X and Moira, they go to visit Magneto and propose a long-term plan to guarantee the future of mutant kind. Um, Eventually, Magneto takes his helmet off and lets Charles probe his mind, which, for anybody who's read a lot of X-Men, knows that that's a huge deal.
yeah,
Magneto's helmet is literally invented to keep Xavier out of his head. So for him to just succumb and let Xavier read his thoughts, that's a big damn deal. Um, you go into year 10 after they start having this conversation and seem like they're going to work together, and we're back into the present. So Magneto and Xavier show Cyclops the plan of the new Master Mold, which was apparently the information that Mystique, Toad, and Sabretooth were acquiring in the first issue of House of X. Also, we didn't touch on Orcus and the space station. We should have. The humans all this time have
oh
been maintaining a
yeah,
space station near the sun on the remnants of Soul's Hammer, which is another piece of Secret Wars. It's another toy from the Secret Wars toy box, essentially, is what I'll call it. Because Soul's Hammer was something that was created by the Illuminati to destroy planets during the entire lead up to Secret Wars 2015, because they wanted to stop the universal incursions. It's yeah, I counted it up, and it probably took me a month and a half to read all of Hickman's Secret Wars lead up stuff, because it was a full run on Fantastic Four. It was a lot to do with the Illuminati being formed and some of their decisions after the incursion started. It was an entire Orcus, not Orcas.
yeah.
There was no blue hair in the space station. Mystique was there though, so it was blue skin, but that's later on.
Yeah,
And
and that's
Mystique is
pretty
hotter than
common for
yeah.
X-Men.
Mystique is hotter than Renfimus ever could dream of being. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's neither here nor there. Uh,
your hot take.
yeah, well, it's just that's a hot take. I'm pretty sure everyone with eyes shares it with me. Um, but anyway, there's a space station that's basically headed up by every human organization on the planet, including SHIELD, SWORD, Hammer, AIM, Hydra. You name it, they've got a hand in it, and it's basically the last resistance of humans. And they've got a mother mold floating in orbit.
And love their acronyms.
Yeah. But the mother mold is a giant master mold, or is a giant master mold that makes master molds, like a master mold makes a sentinel. You follow? Does everybody get that? It's the thing that makes the thing that makes the sentinels.
Exactly.
So, in finding out that that's been created, Xavier and Magneto get Cyclops to form a team to go take out this mother mold.
Which I just want to point out, just these little details in Krakoa itself, like the biotech, like computer that Xavier is using to like scan the drive and stuff. Just
Yeah.
I like those nice little touches. Like that's really good, like world building
Right.
for like how this island works.
Or the fact that they take some of the most obscure mutants and actually make them important in the storyline.
Yeah, that's really cool. Marvel needs to make a Sword and Shield team up book.
I'm not going to read your chat out loud, Novel Bro, but I would agree up until she turned herself into like Richard Nixon. You know, she finds out you didn't like her
Oh,
cooking and she turned herself into Richard Nixon. That'd be a bad day, buddy.
hey, I mean, well, in his case, maybe Winston Churchill would
I
be a
am
more
not a crook.
culturally relevant politician.
But I'm gonna need you to do that every show from now on.
I'll work on my Nixon impersonation
There
just
we
for
go.
this show.
There you go. We jump into year 100, and Cardinal and Rasputin return successfully from their mission. And you see them with the Four Horsemen, or so you suppose are the Four Horsemen. You've got Magneto, Wolverine, what looks to be Krakoa in personification. I thought it was Groot to begin with, but I really have no clue who this character is.
I don't think it ever really tells us. Does it?
I think it's supposed to be at least an embodiment of Krakoa, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
There's so much going on, and I may have just missed it.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what you get, Novel Bro. Um,
Damn, payback's a bitch, ain't it?
but yeah, it is Krakoa. But
Okay.
essentially they have a location of the key machine intel. Blah blah blah. They uh, they point out that the information is useless since they would have to hold off the Sentinels in order to access the information, which would turn into a suicide mission. But then Apocalypse assures them that he will personally lead the charge and ensure their success. So this is where you find out that this is the life where Moira McTaggart goes in league with Apocalypse. So that's the sixth life that you don't really know where it goes on and where it ends or whatever. Or no, that's the ninth life. Excuse me.
Yeah, the ninth life.
Um, and then year 1000, the librarian and Nimrod the Greater apparently have been plotting to prove their value to a higher universal civilization of machine tech. And this gets really weird for me because I don't
Yeah.
understand it very well. But there's a full breakdown of how the celestial area of the X-Men lore has been working. Um, yeah. So there are
So
types of
basic.
planetary and galactic societies.
Yeah, and I found this really interesting
It's fascinating,
personally.
but it's also excruciatingly confusing until you get to Society 1,000,000 Phalanx. And that harkens back to an old X-Men story called the Phalanx Saga, in which Technarchs, one of which Warlock is a rogue Technarch, and it's Warlock that has partially melded with Cypher, I believe, is why he has that really weird arm.
Yeah.
But so it kind of harkens back to that. So here again, you see another part of Hickman twisting and molding and weaving parts of the storyline that have kind of fallen to the wayside or been left in the toy box for too long, so to speak, and just kind of reweaving some of that lore back into something different. So,
And in such a fantastic way too.
well, it's very intricate. It's a little confusing, and again, if you don't have any idea about any of this old X-Men lore, then I can imagine it would be excruciatingly confusing to try and figure out what the hell this had to do with Moira McTaggart having 10 lives at this point.
Oh yeah, I definitely had to go way back in my mind and pull out some of the old X-Men lore while reading this, which I like that.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. But if you don't know it, or if you're not even familiar with it, then it kind of leaves you a little bewildered.
True.
So, but again, it
Yeah.
kind of allows for some of those old stories to come back. And I'm not sure if this is something that Marvel has prompted Hickman to do so that they might boost the sales of some of these old stories if they reprint them in trade now that they've got the rights back to the X-Men movies. Hint, hint, knock, knock, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Or if this is something that Hickman just does as a writer because of his love of the art form, because, either one is understandable. So,
Oh
what
yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
although if they were to make a X-Men, like maybe a trilogy movie, one like House of X, Powers of X, then one like together sort of jumpy around movie, that wouldn't be the worst thing if you get the right director and cast.
I don't know that this movie could be made, or
Would be
this
kind of
story
cool
could be
to
made
see.
into a movie. it'd be Inception all
Probably
over again
not,
with hero
but I would
trappings.
love to see it.
Um, but anyway, you
Fair
find
enough.
out that the year 1000 cast, the librarian and his civilization of blue-skinned people, have planted what you call a world mine in their universe, and that world mine has been assimilated by a phalanx, and these blue-skinned creatures seek ascension, and we don't know what that means until you get to these graphs that I showed you before, and basically every sentient life form of machine learning can grow by being assimilated by the higher life form, so to speak, or evolving into it. That's the way I took it. I mean, does that sound about
And
right?
yeah, and then there's some arching like machine, like hive mind sentience that like absorbs like mind to like learn to preserve like all knowledge or something like that.
Right.
And that kind of like the machine AI is it's like a nat is as weird as it sounds, a natural force,
Oh, okay.
which is
So,
a really weird but interesting concept.
so famine is that tree creature. That's who that is. I just realized that was actually laid out in the opening pages of this next book, Powers of X #3.
Oh, the one I just picked up, didn't open it yet, but we're jogging my memory as we go.
Right. Well, this is the first one where you don't immediately skip between Powers and House of X. So you get off of Powers of X #2, and you're supposed to read Powers of X #3 next, which is helpful because that's the next one that came out. But
Yeah,
it starts off in year
remember
one.
that.
It starts off in year 100, and he starts off. You find out that the machines are converting human babies into cyborgs, so to speak, infecting them with like the techno-organic virus or whatever
Yeah,
the form of it is. And, it starts out and
which
there's
what a
a,
horrible virus to have.
yeah,
But
well, it starts out and well, not even the four horsemen, but an attack party basically opens up by attacking a church of ascendancy, is what it's called. And Zorn and Rasputin are your main characters here, but they go through and they start raising hell, and a head sentinel confers with Nimrod and is just like, look, they're fucking shit up again. And Nimrod's like, you think I care? I'm doing this right now. So she goes off to handle it herself. And this is again one of the parts where I'm like, okay, so they used two panels. They used the exact same two panels in this book to show that she's waiting for him to change his mind or say something or whatever. And then he's just like, what? So he's like, go do whatever you want to do. I'm going to stay here and do what I want to do because that's who I am and that's who I care about. So you flash back to the Temple of Ascendancy, and Cardinal has taken some kind of, you know, terminal apocalypse seed, is what he calls it, to get over his disposition to nonviolence. Um, the main Sentinel shows up. Rasputin and Zorn kind of start going to her, and then you clip over to Cypher, Wolverine, and Apocalypse, and they're trying to, extract some information. So Cypher gets his crystal, which is apparently how the information is held, and Wolverine sniffs out Nimrod. Survives a blast, but we flip back before we can figure out what happens to the Sentinel versus Rasputin, and they're the Mexican standoff going on. The Sentinel's like, oh, you're not going to open up Zorn's head and release a singularity because it'll kill you too. And that's just what Rasputin does.
Yeah, she's like, bitch, watch me.
Like, fuck it, we're just going to kill everybody.
Yeah.
So, Wolverine is given this crystal, and Apocalypse apparently goes to bat with Nimrod's multiples. And that's when Cypher opens up the Krakoa body, or whatever that he's grown or inhabited, or however that's ended up working.
It's a symbiote type thing.
Okay.
Between him and Krakoa, like they've fused.
Okay. So Wolverine just kind of walks through him, and then Apocalypse just goes to getting basically manhandled by Nimrods. And Wolverine transports to this catacomb and opens up Moira McTaggart's coffin and then feeds the crystal into her chest. She absorbs the information, and Wolverine pops his claws out, and he's like, I'm sorry. She's like, it's okay. I have what I need now, and this is what you do. And you get this beautiful scene. Of just Wolverine tearing into her with his claws. And it just ends on the quote. And that was and so ended the ninth life of Moira X.
Yeah, see, I told you we knew how the ninth life ended.
How to what?
How the ninth life ended.
Yeah. So, but that's been the story so far in Powers of X, is, that's why it wasn't listed in the previous mention, because it was still ongoing. And that kind of leads me to my idea that we were talking about before the show started. I think all of these reincarnations are 10 different timelines that are all happening concurrently. I think the difference is that every time she wakes up in one of them, she's got the knowledge of another timeline, but I feel like all of them have to be happening concurrently for it to work out the way that it's working.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I said like quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
Because you can only perceive whatever timeline is currently being observed. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It would be like the theory of how it works. But Unless we have a quantum physicist in the chat who can, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that's how it would work.
But it's kind of revealed
I
that
don't.
the information that she's fed before he kills her is the origin of Nimrod and how to stop it. So, that's been the ongoing story so far. And Powers of X obviously still has 3 more issues, so we're going to get more into the year 10,000 and all that other good, or the year 1,000 and all that other good stuff. But for now, we flip back over to House of X. And this is a hell of an issue.
Oh, this is the one that like really, really like hooked me in like for good.
Right. So this is the issue where
I was starting to get starting to get a little worn down with like these weird big concepts and all the sci-fi-ness and stuff, but this felt like an X-Men story, this issue, like a classic, the X-Men are going on a mission sort of story.
until the end, right?
Yeah, until the end. I'm leading up to the ending. It felt like that classic. We have a mission. Everybody get in the jet sort of thing.
Right. So, well, actually, no, I'll take that back. There's more to it, but
Huh?
we don't know that this isn't. This is. I thought that it's all running together in my head.
Yeah.
The closest to quantum physics I've ever gotten is watching the full run of Quantum Leap back in the day. Me and you both, brother. I'm right there with you. I
You've
am
never
not.
just read up on a little bit just for fun?
I've always been more of a observation theory guy. Just
Okay.
just regular physics, not quantum physics. How particles
Fair
react, whether they're being observed, and how the light reflecting off your eyes, even though it has no mass, can actually interact with molecules on a atomic level.
All right. Fair enough.
But that's
I don't know.
my Wikipedia browsings at 4 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't sleep because the room was still spinning. So you do 2 issues of House of X back to back now, and the first of those is part 6, Once More Into the Breach. Cyclops and his team of Wolverine, Husk, Archangel, Nightcrawler, Mystique, Marvel Girl, and Monet, St. Clair, or St. Crooks.
St. Croix, I think is how you would say it.
But they take off on a mission to take out the Mother Mold on Soul's Hammer. Also, at the same
And
time,
this is where we get the breakdown of like the progression from Sentinel to Nimrod,
right. So,
which helps
simultaneous,
understand a little bit more.
yeah,
But
well, simultaneously, you also get the alphabet in this issue. But simultaneously to all this, the trial of Sabretooth is going on, and the White Queen just kind of shows up and just like, we're going to be taking him because we've got this paperwork here that says we're going to take him because we're a sovereign nation soon to be.
right.
And they're ready to just give Sabretooth the chair, and Sabretooth's like, yeah, I'll kill all of you. It'll be fine. And, they pass off the paperwork. They take Sabretooth away. And yeah, you get a rundown of the Sentinel progression, and again, these charts and graphs that they give you, they're not bright, they're not colorful, they're not eye grabbing, but they're informative as shit.
Oh, they're so much fun to read.
They are. This is the one regarding the Sentinel process. And I'm not sure. Like this basically takes place in making sure that you understand how the Omega Sentinel that exists on the craft, the Soul's Hammer, is created, because you know she's a robot,
Yeah.
but she almost acts human, and it's very similar to the Year 100 Omega level Sentinel that we just saw get eaten alive by a singularity. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I I thought she was an Omega Sentinel. If you look at the chart, it's a human infected with the like nanotech. I could be wrong, but I thought that's what she was.
Well, it's the Omega cycle. They're all technically. I mean, Omega is the final level, which is the one in Year 100. But this girl is infected, or you know, part of activated. She's like step 5 to step 6 of what the one in Year 100 would have been step 8. At least that's how I took it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Because I mean, if you look at her,
I don't know.
she looks
There's
mostly
so
metal.
many charts.
Right.
So
But
many
you get
charts.
back to the Orcus Forge, and you see the mother mold. The scientists are walking around. The guards in AIM B suits are walking around, and then they discover the X-Men. Um, they deploy
Coming in hot.
they deploy the Sentinels back from where they were working to extract materials, and obviously the Sentinels are not going to get there fast enough. Nightcrawler, bamps around. And I love that that's just become his sound effects, BAMF.
Yeah.
Um, but
Fat ass motherfucker.
he encounters the female scientist and the Sentinel, and apparently the Sentinel has a history with him, which is kind of interesting. Again, I'm sure that's something that's been brought up in a previous storyline or whatever. But if you don't understand it, it's not something you can't move past.
Yeah.
So they find out that they've been breached. They're the teleporter. The Sentinel knows him. His name is Nightcrawler. Point to point, low yields. They're still going to have to dock to insert any kind of sizable assault force. They're having this conversation back to back, and the X-Men are docking. Nightcrawler just starts
Oh yeah.
transporting
Yeah, he
them.
pops back in. Well, he pops back in. Yeah, they have an Omega Sentinel in there with them.
Yeah.
I thought I remember reading that.
Right. We'll deal with that when we have to. First things first. They they dock in, and the male scientist lead goes to building something, and you find out that his wife's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I really wish we would have had kids." And he hits a trigger and blows up the entire ship. And you get a Krakoan reading or a Krakoan key, I guess, which is the
Yeah.
the creation of Cypher. And after a while, you can kind of start piecing together what's going on, where, and whatnot. But you immediately jump into House of X number 4, where the battle continues, and not everybody died in the plane crash, obviously, but their ship is destroyed. There's no way to get back. So this is a suicide mission.
We should mention that they brought up that they're not bringing a Krakoan flower that could teleport them back, just in case they get captured. Yeah, so the humans won't be able to try
reproduce it or whatever.
Yeah.
So
on the opening of this, I forgot about this part. It gives you a kind of a breakdown of the mutant population throughout these various catastrophes, I guess, up until where we're at now.
Right. And that's where we were talking about
Uh,
before. Like, you got the breakdown of Genosha, the Scarlet Witch, um, and they even start calling her the Pretender, Wanda Maximoff, because she's not a mutant. Um, she was retconned from being a mutant when they wanted to use her for an Avengers.
yeah,
Her and Quicksilver are the product of aliens,
it's always aliens.
but yeah, she depowered 1 million mutants after 16 million mutants were killed by the Sentinels on Genosha. Um, and there's less than 0.000000029% mutant population left on Earth, under 1 million. Or, no, post decimation, there are like 200 mutants left right now, which is kind of an important
Yeah, which is
storyline.
crazy.
Well, it's kind of important to the
Yeah,
storyline because, as you see in the next panel, there's there's something going on in the background of this main scene here, but we don't quite know what it is yet. So
right.
Xavier's concentrate or
And
go ahead.
sorry, I just want to point out uh, Xavier's dialogue through all of this is, I don't know, it's weird. There's like a creepy calmness to it. I mean, he was always kind of a, more calm character, but,
I think
if
that's
the
intentional.
situation arose for it,
I,
you'd see him
I,
like emote more, but he's like creepily calm.
I
And
think
I
there's a
really
reason
like
for.
it.
Well, I think there's a reason for that that's revealed at the end. Um, at the end of the
Yeah.
story. So we'll get there hopefully.
Yeah, but you don't know that. You don't know that like as you're reading through. You're just like, man, he just seems is like I thought maybe they were going to twist it where like he's the villain or something like that. I
Right.
thought there was going to be a bigger twist than what there is, which I think is a compliment to the writing,
Right. Well,
because it had me hooked the entire time. Like, okay, what's going to happen? Oh, that's it. That's brilliant.
well, Nightcrawler.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, Nightcrawler basically transports Cyclops, Wolverine, Mystique, and himself to different collars, so to speak, holding the mother mold in place on the space station. The scientist is grieving over her dead husband. They send out attack ships and sentinels to intercept the remains of the spaceship, all the while Xavier is communicating with Jean Grey. And, you know, there's a there's not as much of a I don't know, there's not as much of a sense of dread on the fact that this is a suicide mission as you feel like there should be. And
Yeah.
you see them start to, unlock the collars and release the head. Um, Jean Grey is communicating with Xavier, and Monet basically throws her into an escape pod and is like, "Get the fuck out of here! I'll hold them off so you can get away." And she,
Mystique is shot out of an airlock.
yeah, yeah, Mystique is shot out of an airlock. Penance is boarded on the X-wing. Um, Cyclops is releasing his control collar, but when Mystique gets shot out of the airlock, there's one still holding on to the mother mold, and everyone else has been stopped. So they decide to activate the mother mold, even though it hasn't primed yet and may be insane. And it starts into this whole, you know, very strange soliloquy talking about how man and mutants have
Yeah.
both been judged. And Nightcrawler does the most badass thing ever. Since they can't release the channel from inside, Nightcrawler teleports Wolverine outside of the forge and against the actual collar holding the thing right next to the sun, and is immediately vaporized as they appear. Wolverine, however,
Yeah,
because of his healing factor, has enough time to cut through the collar and send the head flying into the sun before he dies.
with him riding it.
Yeah. So, they both die. Everybody dies. Everything's dead. But the Mother Mold's been defeated. So, I read this and I'm like, but we're only halfway through the story. Like, what? Okay, so
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Nimrod's been defeated. The Mother Mold's been defeated. What else is going on? I mean, I know there's that other timeline and there's still some stuff to explain about Moira, but how are they going to get 6 more issues out of this? I did not realize that it was just about to speed up into a damn light speed.
It goes like warp drive after this.
Right. Because at the end of this issue, once he realizes that all of the X-Men he sent on the mission are dead, you see Charles Xavier exclaim that mutants will never again die at the hands of humans. No more. And it's a good time to point out that at the end of all of these books, there's a quote. And it's usually the last thing that's said in the book, but it's attributed to the character, and it's given an entire page to show the severity of it, how the weight of that statement should be held. And
Right.
that leads into Powers of X number 5? 4 or 5?
I
think 4.
Let's see. House of X 5.
Oh, no.
Unless. No?
No, that's House of X 4 we just read.
Oh. I think my stack got out of order.
Good.
Yeah, to Powers of X 4.
Okay. So, get that pulled up. But yeah, we're just over halfway.
Which is probably one of my favorite covers. I don't know why. I just really like
it's an homage. It's a cover that's been done before. I've seen this cover before. That's probably
more then.
I don't remember where, but I've seen this cover before. But X-Men have had some of the most iconic covers. So,
right.
In Powers of X4, you only have 3 timelines now that the year 100 timeline has ended, which was the 9th life of Moira McTaggart. You got X-Men 1, or Year 1, where X and Magneto travel to Bar Sinister to talk to Mr. Sinister. And they kind of have an interesting conversation because there's multiple Mr. Sinisters running around. They quickly realize that the Sinister they're talking to isn't going to be helpful, but he is assassinated and replaced almost Deadpool-like. It almost felt like a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't a huge fan of how they did that, but he didn't really show up as a main character much after that, so whatever.
Mr. Sinister,
I can let it slide.
Assassinates his predecessor and basically claims to be the Sinister with a mutant gene, and he agrees to help Xavier start cataloging mutant DNA. Which anybody familiar with Sinister will know that Sinister is notorious for genetically meddling with the X-Men. He has had a long history of being infatuated with Scott Summers and Jean Grey and trying to splice their DNA or make them mate or make clones of them to make mate to make the perfect mutant. But Xavier, after getting the agreement that he would help establish a cache of DNA, wipes his mind. And that doesn't make any sense right now. But then again, anytime you make a deal with Mr. Sinister, it's best that only one person knows about it. So, um, it jumps over to year 10 after
And then we get a
that.
weird.
Yeah.
We also get a weird, like, Sinister breakdown,
Yeah.
which
Um,
not as interesting as some of the other.
yeah, I wasn't going to pull it up. We're
Like,
we're cutting it close
yeah.
on time here. We're probably going to run a little bit over getting through this, but
Oh
damn it,
yeah,
we're
we are.
getting through it. We're doing this. We're doing it live if we got to do it, but we're doing it. So you cut into year 10,
Or die trying.
and it it's basically just giving you the story of Xavier dropping Cypher off on the island to learn, what's going on with it. And you find out that the island actually has history in the X-Men lore, which I don't know has ever been brought up in story, but um, it talks about the Twilight Sword, and how the island was once Okara, and then it was split into two, Arako and Krakoa. Um, it was ruled by Apocalypse before the world was old, or while the world was young. He had his four horsemen, and they sealed the chasm of Krakoa, and Krakoa then remained half, not whole, now and forever, and that's why the island was sad. And Xavier basically explains that he's got this Grandmaster plan, and just zaps it into Cypher's head. And he's like, "It'll take me a year, but I can probably do it." And drops him off with the bag and just leaves him there. You cut over to year 1000, and the elders are encountering the Phalanx, which is, as we know now, a galactic society with. I still don't completely understand the galactic breakdown and how it's going to be important, because these entities are essentially gods, and I don't understand how they can be viable villains. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's more of, I don't know if they're necessarily played as a villain, because that's kind of why I said they come across more as like just a force of nature. They're more of just like something to try and like prevent from happening like as best as possible,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, or like to hold off as long as possible. Like as long as your society doesn't reach that certain level, then they're never going to come to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if it's just a matter of just not evolving to a certain point, then like basically just keeping the Nimrod, like the nanotech virus from becoming a thing. If
Right.
they just can do that, then these creatures are never going to show up. Is kind of how I read it.
Right.
So
Well,
I don't know. It's weird, but I kind of like it.
yeah. Well, that leads us into, well, essentially the year 1000. In that issue, you find out that the Phalanx is there to assimilate a world mind, and they're going to deliberate on whether or not the Society of the Librarians, as I'm calling them at this point, is acceptable for assimilation into the Phalanx.
Yeah.
Ascension is what they call it. And while they deliberate, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. Like, there's a little bit of
Yeah,
dialogue, and it
that's
explains.
basically how it ends.
Yeah, there's a little bit of dialogue between Nimrod the Greater and the librarian. A little bit of banter, but for the most part, you've learned that the world mind or the world mind was created by the librarian's people to try and circumvent the fact that they aren't, completely machines, yet they want to assimilate into, the phalanx dominion or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Again, it's very
Yeah.
convoluted. It's very strange, and I don't understand the purpose of it now. But it's very similar to the the black the Black Kings and the White Swans in Secret Wars. They didn't make a whole lot of sense, and they even disappeared after a while. But by the end of everything, you understood their purpose. So that
Yeah.
basically that'll
And
basically
and this is going to be rolling forward into more series, so maybe we'll get more of an explanation of them
right,
after that.
right. But that rolls right into House of X number 5, which is one of the more interesting issues. Like, I wondered how they were going to handle this. So, as you see on the cover, you've got Apocalypse, and again, House of X only takes place in the one timeline, the year 10 timeline.
Yeah.
So, you've got you open up, there's Magneto and Polaris, who has been retconned as his only daughter now. She mirrors his powers on a lesser level with magnetism, and there's this is after the deaths that we saw in the previous issues of House of X. So they introduce a group of 5 mutants who they've been brought up before, but they're not very. I don't know. They're not very well identified, so to speak. Like, there's a mutant whose name is Gold Balls, literally. And he has the ability to create an infinite amount of gold balls. And up until recently, no one had understood that these were unviable eggs he was creating. So, knowing that, they used the powers of a mutant Proteus to warp reality and make the eggs viable. And then they injected them with DNA. Remember that part where Professor Xavier made a deal with Mr. Sinister to catalog all mutant DNA?
I do remember something to that fact, yes.
So that seems like it makes a lot more sense now. So now we're
Yeah,
injecting mutant
because
DNA. Yeah,
before I thought it was just part of what we had seen in Powers of X, where you had like that mutant breeding program, basically
right,
combining different mutants' powers. Like
right.
I thought it was just a backstory to that
Well,
at first.
you then bring in a mutant by the name of Elixir, and Elixir gives the kiss of life essentially to these eggs. And then you have a mutant by the name of Eva Bell, um, who can speed up the gestation period of these eggs. And they're all linked together by a Summers. There's always a fucking Summers. Um, if there's ever
Well, there
not a
has to be.
Summers in an X-Men story, then God help us all. But Hope Summers has the power of hope. Her power unifies all of their other powers and allows the procedure to work without issue, without fail. And you find out that they're regrowing dead X-Men. So the first scene that you see in Powers of X, or in House of X, is this scene here, which is explained to be regrowing the X-Men that died, destroying the Mother Mold. And it's explained that they are able to do this because Cerebro was not just created to locate mutants, but it was created in order to back up the mutants' knowledge, their brain,
Well, it says
their
their
personality.
entire essence, so their
Yeah,
memories, their
there's
emotions, like everything about them.
and they don't get into the philosophical question of a soul, but you know, I assume that because it's an actual life that it has a soul and with all the memory of all the blah blah blah. But it doesn't get into that question, and it just
Yeah.
kind of skips over it and makes it kind of a nothing burger. So I don't really worry too much
Which can we
about it.
just say this rebirth scene, if you will, the strategic placement of hair and smoke over genitals.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's really well done. The art's beautiful
It
throughout
is.
this whole book. Like I said, I'm annoyed at the fact that every scene that's a duplicate is an exact duplicate. But when uh, when they're revived, um, the entire team is everyone that died on this mission is regrown, and that's where we find out that this is kind of what the plan is for Krakoa. They're going to repopulate the mutant lifespan, like the mutant population.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, another clever genitalia hiding is Nightcrawler's tail spike
yeah,
covering Jean's vagina.
yes, yes. I wasn't going to focus too terrible much on
Anyways,
that, but I'll pull that up because obviously there's nothing wrong
I
with
mean,
it.
it it makes me laugh, like the creative ways that they like try and make like a big open scene like that of naked people, and like
Yeah.
just the ways that they place them to cover things
Oh well,
just
his head's
amuses me.
covering
I
up
don't know why.
Cyclops' junk,
Yeah,
but
and they're just chilling there like on some stage thing, just naked in front of everybody.
right.
You better hope if you're in that situation, you better hope it's not cold up there.
But yeah, and they give you a full breakdown on everything that just happened. So it explains that the genetic base comes from the backups and the redundancies that Sinister has gathered and shared with Xavier. Um, the host bodies are grown from the eggs um, provided by gold balls and all that shit. The mind is backed up on. I just love the name gold balls. Um,
I love it's fantastic.
but the mind is backed up by Cerebro, and it even notes that
And then it's
there have been no experimentation regarding what happens if you combine a mutant mind with a husk that is not theirs. So that's that's kind of I think that's foreshadowing because I mean obviously we're going to see something like that happen. And later on in
yeah.
this book, when they talk to Moira for the last time, they explain that part of Mystique's demands for being on the council and going along with all this was the resurrection of Destiny, and Moira doesn't want Destiny to come back because precogs would ruin everything that they're doing. They would just create such a hole in their plan, and Moira's like, we can't have that.
And that Moira's no place like seals her off from like any telepath or any form of detection. But if death were to come back, that's the the only person that would be able to know that Moira's there, basically.
Right. And uh, a couple of other things happen in this issue. Um, First off, sovereignty is granted. to Krakoa, and Xavier acknowledges that Emma Frost has a seat on the council, and there's a few countries that have not accepted the proposal of the drug trade for sovereignty or whatever. Wakanda and Latveria are two that actually matter, but also Madripoor. Madripoor comes up a lot in Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
But Latveria, Madripoor, Wakanda, some nations under Wakanda, some for political reasons, some for ideological reasons. But, you know, the White Queen is added to the council to distribute the drugs. We find that out. And Sebastian Shaw is asked to the council to get the drugs through the black market to these countries that haven't accepted sovereignty. So I'm beginning to think that there might be something more to these drugs than just the benefit that they're putting on the surface. So that'll be interesting to kind of see.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're just kind of like mentioned and talked about, like they're almost just kind of like a plot device at this point,
Right.
or not even. So I'm interested to see if they actually if they do expand that out at all.
Well, that's not all that happens in this issue. Um, they cram a lot into this, but it moves very quickly.
They do.
They invite every evil, quote unquote, or misguided, quote unquote, mutant into Krakoa, including Apocalypse. And this kind of cements the fact that Apocalypse is familiar with the island. But then something very interesting happens. They explain that they have to have them basically express the ideals of Krakoa, that they're gonna not cause a lot of trouble and all that good shit. And the last thing I
Yeah.
ever expected to see happening happens. Xavier and Apocalypse shake hands.
And what a gorgeous page too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I gotta say that's got to be a lot more the colorist than just the art. The art's fantastic, but the colorist just does something amazing with this.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, the coloring in that is fantastic.
so we're kind of starting to see everything unfold here, and that leads us into Powers of 10, number 5, and
I'm
in
still saying X.
well in in Powers of 10, year 1, you've in Powers of 10, number 5, year 1, you have a conversation between Xavier and Forge, and Forge asks, or Xavier asks Forge to modify Cerebro and ask for some backups for main storage unit to the ability to copy mutants' minds. And after a little bit of back and forth, they come to the agreement that it would need otherworldly materials, which Xavier obviously has access to. And he finally just he's like, I don't care how you do it, just do it. And are you gonna do it? And you're left with the
And
understanding that
man, does Xavier looks like menacing in this part.
yes, but again, and that comes to light. Like you figure that out later, like at the end of this.
Yeah.
So in year 10, X and Magneto are talking to Emma Frost at the Louvre, and they work out everything that they've been talking about. They need her to distribute the drugs. She asked for Sebastian Shaw and one more seat that we haven't figured out who she's bringing on yet. Um, and then finally, in year 10, finally, um, they're meeting with Namor telepathically. Xavier is, and Namor just kind of balks at his offer, and he's like, "Look, you say that we're superior to humans, but I'm going to need you to come back when you really mean it, buddy."
Right.
And then, go ahead. You got something?
Oh, I was just, these pages are kind of a little sticky sometimes, so I was
What are you doing to your comics?
trying to get them to turn. They're not sticky. You know what I mean. Like the ink is sticking.
Oh yeah, that's quality Marvel printing for you right there. In the year 1000, you find out that the Phalanx has accepted the offer to destroy, or assimilate and ascend the Librarian's race, and the Librarians explain that this is going to lead to them consuming Earth. So you got that going for you, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, this is a really fast-paced issue. Like, a lot happens, but it goes by quickly. But then you get into the finale. You get into House of X number 6 and Powers of 10 number 6. So, in House of X number 6, it just goes down a timeline. It shows that 1 month prior to the events of the series, everyone's meeting in the no space under Krakoa, including Xavier, Magneto, and Moira. Xavier sends out his message to the world, informing them of the drugs, and it alerts everyone, including the Avengers, Doctor Strange, and the Fantastic Four. Basically what we know have already happened since issue 1. So I think that maybe 3 months later he was just trying to remind everyone that this is how it all started.
Yeah.
Some of the information pages reveal that there's the Quiet Council of 12, including Krakoa and Cypher as 13 and 14 respectively, and then they reveal that they're commanders in Magic, Gorgon, Bishop, and Cyclops, who is the captain commander. So that's kind of the pecking order of mutants right now. Strangely, Wolverine's not a commander, and I'm curious about that. But in the present,
It's probably because even if he's not, people still do whatever the hell he says because they're scared of him.
but then it flash forward to the present, and the Quiet Council is meeting to determine the first laws of their nation, which are: mutants must make other mutants, mutants shall not murder humans, and the land of Krakoa must be respected. The council finds Sabretooth guilty of the second charge, and they refuse to have any prisons on Krakoa. So they pull a Green Lantern and they just trap him inside the island. Which is kind of weird. Right after mentally assaulting him and neutering him to the point of drooling, which, again,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Because the same characters you would expect to show empathy and expect to reject this, all like it's a unanimous vote that Sabretooth doesn't deserve his second chance right now. Like, he was ordered to go in and get out quietly without hurting anybody. He refused that order, and they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna put you in stasis underneath the island for a while. Maybe one day you'll have a second chance, but until then, you'll know what's happening, but you won't be able to do shit about it, buddy.
Right. Which does sound awful.
So the council adjourns, and they celebrate the birth of a new nation while, lamenting on the idea that running a nation should never become easy.
Yeah, kind of that whole what is it? The strong men or hard times make strong men. Strong men make good times. Good times make weak men. Weak men make hard times, sort of
Yeah.
thing. That's kind of what I got from it, from that bit.
So it.
And we just need to point out during the celebration, Wolverine willingly takes a beer to Cyclops, which I don't think has ever been seen before.
And Jean Grey willingly gives a beer to Emma Frost, who, you know, I
Yeah.
don't know if you were familiar with that time frame where Cyclops was just like, Jean Grey's dead. I'm just going to bone the White Queen for a while. But
I mean, as you do.
It erased so, like, it didn't erase, but it just, you know, you see Cyclops and Havoc wrestling around together, Jean Grey and the White Queen getting along, Cyclops and
Kind
Wolverine
of.
getting
Reluctantly.
along. Well, even so. I mean, it just, it led to, it really felt like a fresh start for mutants.
Yeah.
And you know, you see their celebration going on, and then you see Xavier and Magneto looking on, while even Apocalypse almost seems at peace.
Which is so creepy.
Yeah.
Can I just say that?
Yeah.
Like, that shot is just so creepy.
Well, I mean,
Or that whole page, really.
He explains it when he first gets there. He's like, "Look, I've waged my war for mutant supremacy for this to happen my entire life. Like this has been my overall goal. You just accomplished it without shedding a single drop of blood."
Yeah.
You know, he didn't order
It's
Sabretooth to
still
kill
creepy.
anybody. I mean, yeah, the people they killed on that space station, that was a necessary evil, but for the most part, like,
Right.
Xavier didn't order a single person killed.
Yeah.
He said to destroy that thing at all cost, absolutely, but he said try not to kill them. And, you know, I think that Apocalypse is kind of taken aback by the fact that this is something that he should have thought of, maybe. And I don't think that this is the last we see of Apocalypse either. I mean, you can't keep that warlord at bay for long, but it would be. And as we get to it in Powers of X in the next issue, what is even going on here? Everyone's getting along. This isn't the X-Men I know. Well, wait, just wait.
Just
like I said, the
wait
end,
for it.
Yeah, the end of this series really sends it home. Because in true Hickman fashion,
basically.
Go ahead.
So before we get to the finale, this is basically his way of rebooting the entire X-Men universe.
Right.
So it's everything's kind of like washed clean. We have a good starting point where we know where we're at. No weird like Days of Future Past type timeline. You know, nothing too weird. Like this ending, basically, this is where we're at, and we're going to go forward from here. It's a nice clean start, and I think he did it very well. But we'll get to that when we finish this last issue.
So this issue actually breaks pacing a little bit. Usually it starts chronologically. You get X-Men year 1, year 10, year 100, year 1000 in that order. This issue starts with year 1000. And the librarian that's been the main character of that little subsect is going through the preserve, which is revealed that holds mutants and non-humans.
Yeah.
And he comes across Moira, who has survived from blood transfusions from Wolverine this entire time somehow. Plot device. he informs them that he's arranging for them to be taking off planet before the ascension, because if Moira dies, then she might be able to stop it. Whereas if she's off planet and then the collective can exist outside of space and time, then her powers can't stop them from being ascended.
Yeah.
And it's also revealed that the librarian is a race of what's called post-humans, which are basically humans that have become mostly machine, and in a sense
Yeah.
to become
Fully integrated.
to overpower mutants. And he explains that if Moira dies when the Phalanx destroy the Earth, she can stop them. If she's left behind, the Dominion can use their consciousness spread throughout all of space and time and stop her. And at the beginning of this conversation, the librarian is taunting Wolverine, saying that he'll never be fast enough. From the moment he thought to move his muscles, the librarian was already countering his action. And at the end of his little soliloquy, Wolverine just kind of pops his claws through his head, which is pretty fantastic. And then he's like, "Is that quick enough for you?"
So I do have one thing that I don't know if they're going to explain this or if we just have to accept this. I know this isn't the Wolverine that was reborn through the cradle yet, but is he going to have bone? Is this Wolverine that was reborn? Is he going to have the bone claws, or is Xavier going to have to make him go through the horrible process of getting adamantium bound to his skeleton again?
I think
I'm curious about that.
I think we just accept that the adamantium is there. I do think we just accept
I guess
that.
technically,
It's part of his genetic makeup.
I guess Magneto could, in theory, put it in him, right?
As long as he applies the sacred ointment.
Yeah. and he's not a cat, so he can consent.
So, well, actually, I misspoke. This issue opens up with year one, but it doesn't complete with year one until we go through this sequence. So we have a repeat of the same thing that happened in year 9, but we find out that this year 1000 timeline is the 6th life of Moira McTaggart. So that's how she's killed, and then we return to the moment of Moira allowing Xavier to read her mind and see all of her lifetimes. Xavier is completely disheveled by the experience, and she explains to him that this is the part where she has to break a certain piece of him. She has to break the fact that he is a good man.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to ensure the survival of mutants throughout time. Because under every other circumstances, if she allows Xavier to be a good man, then mutants die. And that explains just a slight offness of his character throughout this.
Yeah.
How his coldness and his decisiveness has changed, and his morality seems to have shifted. He seems to be more willing to make more deals with the devil because it's the only way.
Yeah.
And then we jump back to present time, and the ongoing story.
Well, and I do want to point out the journal entries are really cool.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of see the slow, how she slowly is chipping away at and stuff, and then it does explain why she's hiding in the no place.
Yeah. Go ahead and talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So she basically goes on to say these past like several lives, if you will, she's become too active of a part, and in order for this to succeed, she needs to remove herself back into the background of everything, and so they used a replica of her, one of the experiments, to fake her death, so she could just hide away for a while. So everyone thinks she's dead. That's why she's in this place, and only Xavier and Magneto, I think, are the only two that know that she's there. If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, from what I can tell, they're the only ones that have ever interacted with her, aside from the place where she goes to eat.
Yeah,
So, um, and they meet her back in the no space and inform her that the new council has been formed, and Moira brings up the fact that the Red King hasn't been named yet, and Xavier's like, I trust her. And then he also tells her that in order to convince Mystique to join, they had to promise to resurrect Destiny, in which Moira's like, yeah, but you can't do that. And they're like, we know. So that we've already got some conflict set up and some intrigue set up into the future of this Dawn of X storyline that's springing from this.
yeah,
And, you know, they basically step forward and renew their vigor to man this fight, and it ends up in the same spot that the end of the House of X ended up, but it goes a few pages further, and the conversation just is a little more in depth. And
yeah. It basically
they're just like, yeah,
goes on to say that
let them
we're
come,
still going to have trouble.
but let them come.
Yeah,
They can't deal with what we can do now. Um, so basically, as a quick refresher, we've got resurrection, we've got miracle drugs that we don't know the consequence of yet. Um, we've got every mutant that's currently alive basically networked together. Um, we know that there are going to be problems with the world superhero communities for this, so I see a lot more Avengers versus X-Men titles coming through. But you also,
probably Fantastic Four versus X-Men.
yeah, but you also are given the breakdown of what's to come. So these two
And these are
series.
all. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say these two series led into uh, X-Men #1, Marauders #1, Excalibur #1, X-Force #1, New Mutant #1, and Fallen Angels #1. So all of which are going to be basically the X-Men line of comics.
Yeah, they're dubbing Dawn of X.
And luck,
So
well,
they're all going to
luckily,
be moving forward in the House of X timeline.
right. So one thing that I do appreciate is that none of them are double shipping every week. Like you're getting one issue a week.
Yeah,
So X-Men fans might be able to get back into reading X-Men comics. As far as an overall review goes, though, I really enjoyed it. It just there's so much just overall stuff to kind of take in. I read somewhere on Twitter that said, Hickman is the best for writing for a trade, and I disagree because I know what Marvel's going to do. Marvel's going to take House of X, and they're going to take Powers of 10, and they're going to make two trades of 1 through 6 of each of those series, and anybody that buys them is
yeah,
going to be like, what the fuck am I reading right now?
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, I had this exact conversation actually with one of the guys at the comic book shop when it was about halfway through the series or so, and maybe about issue 4 on one of them, and I was like, "Yeah, it's." I was like, I'm enjoying this a lot, but it's getting confusing keeping track of which issues coming out when and stuff." I was like, "I love how it has that reading order in the back," and then we started having this exact same conversation. He was like, "Well, if they were smart, they would make just one big trade with them in the reading order." I was like, "Yeah, but do you really think they're gonna be smart?" And he just kind of like hung his head. I was like, "Nah."
well, and I also like to say that once you get to the end of this and you understand all of Moira's life cycles, this begs to be reread. So you can pick out the stuff that you missed the first time, maybe kind of piece it together, the timeline in your head a little better.
Oh yeah, I mean, even just doing this, uh, just this quick kind of like recap, like flipping through, I'm noticing little things. So I'm definitely going to go back through and reread all of these.
But and this was brought up in Gateway to Comics' stream. I think that everyone needs to kind of consider this. Right now, we have a very good tipping point to rebrand and rehash the X-Men. Not rebrand, but rehash the X-Men and give them something that actually is worthy of their readability. Um, it reminds me of, and I've mentioned this before on the show, but Age of Apocalypse, because during Age of Apocalypse, they canceled all the ongoing X-Men books and replaced them with books that pertain to Age of Apocalypse. Um, so there's a very good chance that the X-Men books going forward will be, much better intertwined. They'll be, and that can be good or bad.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't think that they need to be, necessary reads. I think if you just want to pick up, say, um, X Men, X Force, and Fallen Angels, that it should make enough sense to read those 3 books without having to pick up Marauders, Excalibur, and New Mutants. If it's
yeah.
you have to buy all 6 to understand it, this is not going to work.
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
and there's no way that I
being
can see. Well,
with being a big X-Men fan, I'm probably at least going to get the first issue of each one of these
yeah. Well,
as they come out, especially since none of them, like you said, are double shipping. That
yeah,
does make it a little bit easier.
yeah.
But I doubt I'm going to end up following every single one of those
I mean,
really in depth. But I'm
there,
probably going to pick.
there's a chance that they'll be good enough that we'll want to, but it's testy
Yeah,
because it's hard first and foremost to string 6 books together. Uh, Even though there's like 8 Spider-Man books ongoing at the same time, none of them really overlap.
yeah. Well,
So,
from what I understand, like Hickman's still going to be kind of involved with these, not necessarily writing, but I think he's going to be involved with all of the titles. I think he's writing X-Men. Let me see. One of these actually has a fold out like advertisement for the upcoming books, and I think it says who's writing what.
yeah, give us that rundown.
Let's see. Yeah, so Hickman is writing at least X-Men 1,
Okay.
as well as New Mutants,
Okay.
and that's it. So he'll be writing those 2,
Who's
and
writing
then
the
we
rest of it?
have. So let's see, Marauders is Jerry Dugan,
Okay.
Fallen Angels is Brian Hill.
Okay.
Excalibur is Tina Howard.
All right.
And X-Force is Benjamin Percy.
Okay. So no big names except Hickman. So it's kind of going to be interesting, and I'm guessing he's leading the writing direction on all of it.
Yeah,
So it'll
from what
be
I
interesting.
understand, he is. So
And
he's kind of doing like a Kevin Feige with the MCU,
well, it'll become
is
apparent
what it seems like.
after a short amount of time that if this is something that's going to be, remain ongoing, or if this is something that's leading up to another like Secret Wars type event, or maybe like the Mutant
I'm,
War or something like that.
I mean, doing a quick scan of just the cover, just the cover art,
Hmm.
like it looks like there's definitely some character overlap. I
Okay.
mean, you have Jean on the cover of X-Men and X-Force. Um, you have Apocalypse on the cover of Excalibur with Rogue, Jubilee, Gambit, two other characters that I'm not sure who they are,
Okay.
but a he's in like a blue and yellow costume,
All right.
like a classic X-Men costume. New Mutants, you have Husk and Cypher in the suits that we've seen, and it
Hmm.
seems like no. Okay, that's interesting. It looks like Doctor Strange is on the cover of X-Force.
Interesting.
I can't tell if that actually is or not, or if that's somebody else, but that kind of looks like Doctor Strange
It's
anyways.
probably
But
Forge.
but that costume, it has like that weird
Okay. I'll have
like
to look at it.
W symbol. Yeah. But then
But
Fallen Angels actually is the one that is kind of intriguing to me. Because the tagline is "The dawn does not break for all," and you have Psylocke, X-23, and I don't know who this other character is. It looks like it might be a young version of Cable,
okay. X-Man.
possibly,
Interesting.
and they are not in like the Krakoan dress,
Okay.
and they appear to be, I don't know, in some sort of city. My guess is it's probably Madripoor, because it's always fucking Madripoor
But
when one of the Wolverine family is involved. So that's definitely really, really interesting.
well,
So that
all
one, I'm probably just based off the cover, I'm most intrigued by that one.
well, just all in all, because we are a little over budget.
Yeah.
All in all, I'm cautiously excited. Just like the guy in Gateway into Comics, I believe his name was oh God, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. I watched it like 8.5 hours ago. One of the gentlemen on the Gateway into Comics stream that I watched earlier. Check out that channel.
Yeah.
Check out that YouTube account, all that good stuff. But one of those guys said he was cautiously optimistic, and he compared this to Remender's Uncanny X-Force, like I talked about at the beginning of the show. And, it
Yeah.
really just depends on how it's handled going forward. If they start trying to do movies and do tie-ins that don't have anything to do with the Dawn of X and the X-Men books, it's going to get convoluted. But,
Right.
if they do it well,
If they keep if they yeah, if they keep it nice and tight, uh, I'm definitely down for it. I like this concept.
yeah,
I mean, six different books
right.
in like one ongoing series is a little much, but like if they keep it tight and succinct, and like they're their own stories, but there's like an overarching theme that follows, which there seems to be again just based solely off the cover art.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going off of.
Right. We'll have to read them
There
to get
does
a
seem to
full
be,
idea.
yeah, there does definitely seem to be. They're going to be connected, but you'll be able to kind of read them separately as long as you've read House of X and Powers of 10. As long as you've read those, it seems like any one of these separate books is going to make sense to you.
Right.
Is the vibe I get from it. So,
well, I hope so. And again, I'm really interested to see where this goes forward. I think that, like you, I will pick up all the ongoing, at least the first issues, and we'll take a look at those individually. And
yeah,
we'll probably do those as one of our This Week in Comics every week until they come out in first issues. But all in all, for this,
it goes through November.
Yeah.
Let's see. So from this coming week until where to go?
Till 6 weeks following.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna give an actual date.
Like anyone's gonna pay attention
to
that
November
after.
to November 13th. I'm trying to be professional.
Why would you do that?
I don't know.
But no, we personally, I really enjoyed this stuff. I really liked what Hickman did with the story. I like that that it's a fresh start for the X-Men. I just hope that they keep it going and keep it succinct with the storyline and don't do it like they did Avengers when they tried to start doing Avengers tie-in comic books. It made no sense with the actual storyline that was ongoing. It would be a shame to...
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I mean, I don't have high hopes that all of these titles are going to be very long running. Maybe like 1 or 2 volumes each at best before they start to like trickle down or just get cut off. But I would give it at least a good solid 6-issue volume for each one of them. I think they'll each at least get that.
Yeah.
So
we'll see how it plays out, and we'll keep up with it. Like I said, overall, what do you feel on this these issues here, and then we'll wrap everything up.
yeah, no, I really liked it. And as you said, once you get to the end and everything kind of makes more sense, I'm definitely going to go back through and reread these just to be able to find all those little hidden clues and Easter eggs and whatnot that we missed. And it's definitely a good rebooting of the X-Men franchise. The only thing, so the whole like rebirth thing, I like in concept. I am worried that might get overused. Well, going forward, I hope that doesn't become like a story crutch. You know, like they're like, oh, if we die, we can just come back. So like,
well, I don't.
You know what I mean? It does kind of take away.
I don't think it's any more of a story crutch than being able to, clone Madeline Pryor from Jean Grey, or have the Phoenix Force come down and revive whoever it inhabits, or having Elixir revive someone from the dead. The X-Men have been dying and coming back for 50 fucking years. They're going to keep dying and keep coming back for 50 more.
Yeah, I just hope like in the main stories it doesn't become it doesn't become something where like it's used like all the time. Like I hope they can
Well,
still like make make the stories have some sort of like weight and like intensity to them, and that it's not just going to be like, oh, they died. Okay, we'll just throw them through the rebirth
well, they've told us that they would be
sequence.
doing that. I mean, but they've also said that if a death cannot be confirmed, then they would have to wait at least 1 month while they were
Yeah,
looking for them with Cerebro, and that could lead to some interesting things. We've already been alerted that through this kind of genetic, modification and manipulation, that things
right.
like the chimeras came about and the black brains. It's already kind of been foreshadowed that we're probably
So
going to have to see what happens when someone's mind who doesn't belong in someone else's body gets mix matched. I think all of these things can just as
yeah,
easily be story devices as opposed to crutches. So,
that and I, so for Powers of X 6, all they had left was variant covers. When I got there,
oh, okay.
and it says foreshadowing variant, and it has, I'm not sure which character because it's
You're breaking
kind of
up. Try
shadowy and
again.
hard to see. Yeah. So on this foreshadowing variant edition,
Hmm.
it has a character it's kind of hard to make out who it is. I'll have to flip through and see if I can figure it out. But it has him like glowing and sitting on like a throne type thing, and a bunch of other characters that you can't really see like bowing down to him. So I'm curious, kind of curious what that means, but we'll see.
Like I said, I think that it's got a lot of potential. I would like to see it. I would like to see it actually go the distance and actually be good. Because God knows it's been too long
Yeah.
since we had some respectable X-Men stories. I
Oh,
mean,
I know.
you know, like I said, besides the Uncanny X-Force and, my little nostalgia kick with X-Men 92, I really haven't liked anything they've done with X-Men in the past 10 to 15 years.
Yeah,
Because they've
all
been,
new, all different.
well, they've been crutched because of Fox owning the movie rights. Like, you might get a book here and there,
Yeah,
but if it wasn't revolving around Wolverine, then it didn't matter. Or Deadpool.
right.
What's going to happen when Deadpool is Deadpool invited to Krakoa? I'd like to see that.
Was he technically a mutant though?
Yeah, he's a mutant. His X gene was activated, like his dormant X gene was activated, but he's technically a mutant.
Oh, okay.
That's why he was owned by Fox, and that's why
That
they were
would.
able to do Deadpool films.
All right. I mean, that would actually be kind of interesting, like where Deadpool is and all this.
Right.
Not gonna lie.
So
Not
anyway,
saying they need a whole new title.
no.
If like that Fallen Angels or something like that could be interesting. But
Well, I think that about wraps it up for what we've got. Does anybody have any questions or anything before we jump off of here?
yeah,
Hey, hey,
anybody in the chat before
yeah. Good
before
night.
we dip.
Good night, Ixel. Have a good one, man. Thanks for coming by.
Good night, buddy.
And definitely thanks to the Novel Bro, Knox, Matt Christie, Gateway into Comics, everybody that showed up in the chat and participated. Everybody that liked, subscribed, all that good stuff. If you want to support us, links down below, all that nonsense. Ayrton's channel
Yeah,
down there too.
do all that YouTube stuff.
Yeah, Ayrton's channel's down there too. He's only got 20 subs. Help a brother out.
Yeah, I'm really bad at the whole promoting thing.
But anyway, and don't think he's allowed. He kills everything and everyone. Yeah, they'd probably just, that would be interesting to just watch Marvel fans just kind of cringe as Deadpool was trapped in Krakoa. And the reason that I said they take the cue from DC and Green Lantern is that's essentially what Oa does. Oa just kind of eats you. Oh, how's it going, Real Comic Stacks? You came in right at the tail end of the show. We're actually shutting it down, but the replay will stay up. It's all good, man. We went through all 12 issues. The replay will stay up, and you'll be able to listen to it at 1.5 speed if you really want to. So you got that going
Exactly.
for you.
And you can join us tomorrow, where I believe we're on to our next Alan Moore title
What
for
are
the
we
month.
reading? What are we reading for that? League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Anybody in the chat want us to read anything specific?
I'm not picking.
Okay.
I'm not going to pick another title.
By Alan Moore.
I'm just saying that now.
Anybody have
We can
any...
let the chat pick them, or you can pick them.
Yeah. I mean,
I take no responsibility.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't read Watchmen.
If we didn't read what?
Watchmen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's giant blue penis in it, but what are you gonna do? There's also tentacles at the end, which is awesome.
Okay.
But no fish, no fish rape. So.
Well, that's good.
But I definitely appreciate everybody. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I can deal with a blue donger as long as there's no fish rape.
Yeah, there will be more fish monsters, Knox, if we read Watchmen, which we should do. I've already read Watchmen.
Well,
so it's a little bit of a long read, so you're probably gonna want to see if you can start on it a little bit early. I know it's on Comixology, so.
All right. Yeah.
So you can you probably started a little bit early, but it's a couple of hours to read.
Okay. Yeah. That should be doable.
So, anyway, thanks everybody for jumping in. We appreciate everything. And we will see you guys on the next one. So.
Good night, everybody.